and good evening, staff members, and good evening, Fabio. Good to see you here. We will begin by acknowledging the Ngadjuri and the Kaurna people, the traditional owners of the land in which we meet today. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present today. I'll call for apologies, and we have one from Councillor Mark Frankham and one from Councillor Sam. Councillor Sam. We have no leave of absence. We have no non-attendance. And now I'll call for the confirmation of the minutes of the confidential minutes of the ordinary council meeting held Tuesday, the 26th of July, 2022. And I'll get it out properly next time. Would someone like to move that way? Thanks, Councillor Jason, Councillor Dean. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Thank you. Second, the council minutes of the special council meeting held Tuesday, the 2nd of August, 2022. Do I have someone to move that way? Oh, Councillor Lynn. Someone like to second that? Councillor Sharon. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Thank you, councillors. We move on now to communications, and that's certainly been a busy month. I think the Commonwealth Games swallowed up quite a bit of my time with the media, which we were really pleased about. Of course, Kapunda had 3 representatives in the Commonwealth Games, which was more than any other regional town in South Australia. So it attracted quite a bit of media attention. And of course, Darcy Brown was one of those participants, and Darcy was our Young Citizen of the Year up on the board there in 2010. So it's great to see that she's taken that giant step forward, which she has in her sporting career now. Also, young Callum Peters was probably a very unlucky boxer in the final of his bout. Most people thought he'd won that, but he ended up with a silver medal, which is still a very great achievement. And Amanda Sharkey, who plays table tennis in a chair, and she done an unbelievably good job as well. So we've got to be very proud of those athletes, and I think they did our region well. The ABC, both North and West, and the ABC in Adelaide both picked up on that. Also, the Ag Town of the Year's come along again, and Kapunda's made the final 5 once again, with the second highest number of votes of the 54 towns that were nominated in that Ag Town of the Year. So we've got a fair bit of work to do now as a town to get our presentation together, and the judges will be up here early September to have a forensic look at what we're doing here and how we're doing it. The town has been very successful in the past. You know, I think we were runners up last year and year before, so it might be just about Bunda's turn. You never know, but I think what's happened here and in the last 12 months or so is a great credit to the agricultural community, but to the town itself. And this award is judged on both, not just on the output of agriculture, but that's obviously a big part of it, but also the town itself, and the town is certainly growing. Had the honour the other Friday night to attend the Clare and Gilbert Valley Council along with our CEO Richard, to the launch of that council's reconciliation plan. The board of the Ngadjuri people came up from Adelaide for that occasion, and I think it was probably a little bit disappointing that I think there were only 3 of their council members there, which and there was more of the Ngadjuri board members than councillors, which was a bit disappointing. But we learned a lot. I think their plan is a very good one, and we can look at that to what they're doing and see how that matches up to where we're up to. But I think I'd like to share that with you, because we're going on that journey ourselves, and we're a long way down the track, thanks to Simon Sheriff and his team. Also, I attended the Aboriginal Engagement Committee, which I am on, which is a committee of the Northern York Landscape Board. We attended that meeting a week or so back at Burra, and a number of those Nasri people, including their chair of their board, was at that meeting. So I was able to have a good chat to Auntie Pat in relation specifically about the park in the street here, where we've got the Aboriginal corner at the top, at the end, which has had nothing done to it at all from the time that park was established, apart from a few promises that things might happen. Well, Auntie Pat's about to change that and to make sure that they start to get involved and do something in that particular space, because it's there, and it's a shame that it's not presenting those people in the manner it should, and she agrees. So hopefully we can see some action from that as a result of that reconciliation committee. I must say also that it was great to see that the electric car was out front. Thank you, Richard, and your team for organising that. Had a quick skip around the block in it. So with Dean driving, of course, you feel like you feel like I'm in a Formula One. It's frightening. But well done, and I think that's certainly a sign of the times now, getting into electric vehicles, and well done for, I think it was Simon, Councillor Simon, who raised that in the first instance as a possibility, and it's come to life. So things do happen if council members have got the will and got the support of the chamber. This is what happens. Great stuff. Flow FM too have been very good to us. I get a bit of space on there once a month, talk on council matters and so forth. I'm not sure of their reach. I think it's fairly broad, and they go interstate as well. But it does give us a chance to speak on some council matters, and fortunately, I don't get ambushed too often. Occasionally, a question will come out that's a bit tricky, but generally speaking, our council's held in very hard regard by the media. So that's about all I have to offer. Are there any other council reports from any councillors? If not, we can move on. We don't have any deputations or presentations tonight, and this would be the first council meeting, I think, for many, many months where that hasn't happened. I would like to mention, though, and I'd be remiss of me not to, that we just had the candidate information evening last Tuesday night, and there'll be a further information evening on Thursday night. The staff, to a person, did an absolutely wonderful job in presenting this council, presenting their departments and how they operate, and all of the statistics that stand behind them. And it was easy to follow, understand, and the unfortunately only 3 people were there outside of councillors, but and I think Fabio was certainly one of them, and I thought it was an excellent presentation, and I would like to sincerely thank the staff members publicly for that. It was well done. I look forward to the next one. And thank those councillors, our council members that turned up as well, because it adds support to the staff, and at least particular at nights. I think they're important. We want to show that we don't know it all, and sometimes when you come to something like this, you can learn something you didn't know, and I certainly learned a hell of a lot. Filled a little writing pad. Okay, Doug. So we move on now. We have no petitions and deputations or presentations, and we have no adjourned business. So we move on to our action items. Page 6. Councillors, are there any matters you'd like to raise on page 6? Councillor Peter? Well, there's a little report underneath there, Councillor. Is there anything further than that you want to know? Anything specific? Costs. Use your microphone.
be helpful to have an estimated costs and a timeline. Thank you.
Is there anyone
Yeah.
here that can provide some?
Yeah, through the chair, I can answer that. Yeah, look, I think Peter, sorry, my apologies, Councillor Peter was looking for just an update of where it's at. So the CWMS for the Freeling wastewater treatment plant. We've gone through the process. We've selected a tenderer for it. The matter is largely operational, which is probably why the matter hasn't come back again. The reports that were put through previously were really just more for information than anything. There is no decisions for the elected body to make, and the work is largely about to commence with some finalisation of some plans, etc. In terms of the cost of the project, the costs are as we've outlined in the reports previously. The only matter that's outstanding at the moment in relation to cost will be whether we get funding through the CWMS, the LGA CWMS committee. And that committee, as we understand, will be meeting in September. Should we be successful in that, we would expect somewhere between probably $1.5 and $2 million of funding towards that project. So.
Thank you, Richard. Are there any further questions on page 6? If not, we'll move to page 7. Anything there? There is one item at the top there, and I must thank Carrie Rainsford for her offer to assist any of the elected members in not producing their profiles or whatever for them, but assisting them in submitting them online. I'm not. Oh, and members of the public, of course. Anyone that's been to a candidate meeting would qualify because they know about it. Well, they will know about it. So I think that's a very generous offer, and we thank you for that. So any council members that want a little bit of a hand with it, because as we know, it's all online this year, and it is quite different to what most of us would be used to. Is there anything further on page 7, councillors? Nothing further. We'll move on to page 8. Anything on page 8 that you would like to question?
A comment, if I may.
Certainly.
I attended the Greenock Centenary Park meeting last night. It was the AGM, and they were overwhelmed by the increase in allowance to Greenock Centenary Park, which went up from 18,000 to about 30,000. And there's scope to use it wisely there.
Thanks so much, Councillor Peter. That's very nice to hear. Extremely nice to hear. Anything further, councillors? If not, we move to page 9. Page 9, councillors, any questions, comments? Okay. We move on now to section 9, recommendations from the committees. The first one is the strategy committee. The reports and minutes of the meeting of the Light Regional Council Strategy Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 10th of August 2022 be received. Would someone like to move that way? Thanks, Councillor Simon. Someone second that? Councillor David. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Councillors, are there any matters that you would like to have withdrawn for further discussion? Doesn't mean that you can't ask questions, of course, but if you want it removed, we can do that also. Excuse me. If there's no matters for withdrawal, recommendation 2 says that the reports and recommendations of the meeting of the Light Regional Governance Advisory Panel meeting held Tuesday, the 11th of August 2022, numbered, excuse me?
Strategy.
Oh, strategy opinion, what am I saying?
Too far.
Held Wednesday, the 10th of August 2022, numbered 1 and 2, as listed below, be adopted. Someone like to move that way? Thanks, Councillor Bill. Excellent.
If anyone actually went through their gender offices, that messes the pages.
Oh, absolutely, I would second that. Would someone like to second this particular? And thank you, Councillor Simon. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you, councillors. My apologies for having pages stuck together. No, where are we now? The Governance Advisory Panel. 9.2, councillors, Governance Advisory Panel. The first recommendation is that the agenda reports and minutes of the meeting of the Light Regional Council Governance Advisory Panel meeting held 11th of August 22 be received. Someone like to move that way? Thanks, Councillor Dean. Someone like to second that? Councillor Bill, all those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Councillors, are there any matters that you would like to have withdrawn? If not, we'll move on to recommendation 2, that the reports and recommendations of the meeting of the Light Regional Governance Advisory Panel meeting held Thursday, 11th of August 2022, numbered 1 and 2, as listed below, be adopted. Someone like to move that way? Thanks, Councillor Lynn. Someone like to second that? Councillor Bill, all those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Thanks, councillors. We move on to recommendation 3, that the items of GAP 11.1, the independent review dog attack feeling final report of the meeting of the Light Regional Council Governance Advisory Panel, meeting held Thursday, 11th of August, to be considered by the council under the confidential session of this agenda. Someone like to move that way? Thanks, Councillor Lynn. Someone second that? Councillor Sharon, all those in favour? That's carried, thank you. I think we can all understand the reasons for that. Moving on now to section 10, our reports for information. First one is 10.1, the Community Engagement Strategy Update. Any questions in relation to this matter? The second matter is 10.2, the Freeling Town Centre Activation Update. And thanks, Darby, for lighting that. Any questions on that one? If not, we'll move on to 10.3, the Miscellaneous Technical Enhancement Code Amendment. I sat in on that in the Teams meeting, and gee, I thought I was in space. It was a little bit above my head, but it's pleasing to see that they're having a good look at our planning code and in all different areas and doing something about it, because it seems to be a bit confusing for many people. Any questions in relation to that particular matter? If not, we'll move on to the next matter, 10.4, the State Government Planning Review. Once again, it's pretty straightforward. Again, some action in the right direction. Moving on to the Environmental Copper Limited, Knowles Minerals collaboration. Any questions in relation to that, councillors? That seems like good news. If not, there's a recommendation halfway down page 20 that the reports for information be received and the contents herein noted by council. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Jason, someone like to second that? Councillor Dean, all those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Thank you, councillors. We move on now to our reports for decision, and once again, thank you, Lorinda. This is an absolutely forensic report and a matter that's something that we've really got to deal with and probably going to be on our agenda for, I'd say, quite some time. It's really hard to get your head around it, but the report's there and the information is there in front of us, and it's now whether there are any questions in relation to this report. Councillors, are there any questions in relation to this particular matter? If not, there's a recommendation on the top of page 7.
One question, installation of bespoke plane communications. What was that?
Yeah, yes. I think I might have to call on Lorinda to answer that. Thanks, Lorinda.
Okay, so bespoke meaning that we consult with the community for each specific playground on what they want on the boards. So the boards help people who might be, or children that are non-verbal or use other means of communication to be able to communicate about going to our playgrounds. And so we conduct a community consultation and work out, have a temporary board up and people can give feedback, and then after that, we put in a permanent board, but we need to do different ones for each playground depending on their equipment.
Thank you, Lorinda. Well done. Further questions, councillors? Not, there's a recommendation on top of page 22. Someone like to move that way? Thanks, Councillor Jason. Someone like to second that? Councillor Lynn. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Oh, gee. Some work to do with that one. 11.2, councillors, the appointment of council assessment panel. And I think in reading this report, it makes a lot of sense. Are there any questions? Not. There's a recommendation on taking up nearly all of page 26. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Dean, someone like to second that? Councillor Sharon, any further questions or comments? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, those against, that's carried. Thank you, councillors. Next matter, 11.3, the Rosebery Township expansion, the Higginbotham alterations to land management agreements. Are there any questions, councillors? Or comments? If not, there's a recommendation on the top of page 33. Would someone like to move that way? Thanks, Councillor Dean. I understand these are relatively housekeeping matter. Someone like to second this? Councillor Sharon. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Councillors. We move on now to 11.4, the financial year commitments listing for 21-22. Are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Simon.
Yes, well, I'm a little bit confused by this, but excuse me if I ask silly questions, but the one thing still, last year we made a budget for this year, which finished obviously in June, and in that budget we had a we said that we're going to spend 9.9 million on total capital project expenses. So that's what we said we're going to do. And obviously there was a write-up about what this is going to be, and we had a nice sort of flashy leaflet sent with our rates. So now this thing has finished, but now we find out that we actually, what is it, 5.8 million, or is it 5.8 million more or less of this we haven't spent? Does that mean that in reality we didn't get 9.9 million of capital works done? We only got like 4 million of capital works done. Is that what that means?
Through the chair, not necessarily, because at times, excuse me, some of the capital works projects are exchanged for another road, for example. So I think Nurse Road, correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, but Nurse Road was brought forward So other roads are carried forward to this year.
Yeah, close. So through the light stimulus program, there was, and through the local government infrastructure partnership, there was a number of, or council received about, I think, $2.36 million in funding, and then matched that money equally. Those roads were actually all thrown into the budget for last year, but there was never an opportunity for us to deliver all of those roads within that time. Because the program was approved, it was brought into the budget. But in reality, it probably should have been split in two. So when you see roads like Forest Road, Coleman, Curry, Wardbelt, Wingate, they were never going to be delivered. With roads like Gerald Roberts Road, that formed part of the special local road program, and we got the money in for that. So there's quite often there might be still components of the job that actually aren't completed. And similarly, it could be just a timing matter, and you can see with Albert, Carrington and Railway Parade, and if you sort of drive through there at the moment, you know, subject to weather, that was supposed to be sealed today, but of course, that's you don't seal on days like today. So there is that timing issue. So we don't run to that strict 12-month time frame. We've obviously got a program to work in, and sometimes it gets pushed out a little bit. In terms of, I think your comment, did we deliver $9 million worth of work? We would need to go and see what work we delivered. And I can't off the top of my head state what that number was, but I would say it would probably be very close to that, because one of the other things that can occur is that when we adopt our annual business plan, at that point in time, we may not have received all of our grant funding. So I know at the moment that there is grant funding for road projects that we are planning for those works, but the works aren't included in the budget because the announcements actually haven't been made yet. So when those announcements are made, what will quite often happen is the funding will come into the budget, and any of what I call council funded works may get pushed more towards the end of the financial year, and that's what we're seeing with St Albert and Carrington. So does that make sense?
Partially. It doesn't really, because it leads to another question. So the first was, so you said that we almost did 9.9 million, but how come do we have then 5.8 million that we didn't do? Were we meant to do more? And we didn't say, I don't understand. If you say we're going to do 9.9 million, and then we don't do 5.8, but we have 5.8 left, then either we were meant to do more, or we only don't get that point.
No, so
if I may, and then it leads on to the next thing, because next year's budget is 10.9 million of total capital project expenses, which are forecast. So are we really saying we're going to add another 5.8 million to that, and we are going to deliver something like 11 plus 6, $17 million worth of a capital project next year, which seems outrageous if we only sort of barely done 9 last year. So I don't know. That's right. So these numbers just don't make any sense to me, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd have to do a reconciliation of the program to determine that. But these are simply roads that are funded and haven't been delivered. So they will be now delivered in the next financial year with the works that are approved through the annual business plan. And at the end of the day, if we come to next June and they're not, the same process will occur, that we will simply push them out. That's yeah. And look, that may be a symptom of the amount of grant funding that we're getting through, that results in us spending council's money last rather than first.
Yeah, that's good.
So I think just backing up what Councillor Simon was saying there, this $5 million here is not part of the program that we were going to deliver. It's part of a program that we've been funded for, but we haven't delivered it because we were never going to. Is that what we're saying?
Well,
No.
each component is different. I mean, the Freeling Childcare Centre was a commitment that council made to building a car park. But the Freeling Childcare Centre hasn't been built yet.
Mm.
And we don't have to do those works until such time as there's a certificate of occupancy. So we simply we don't worry about that. We just go, well, that's, council's made that commitment. And so it just sits as a commitment rather than anything else. Does that help? And each line would have a variety of reasons along those lines. Some of the work will be delivered by our internal staff, but much of the work is most likely to be delivered by contractors. So it doesn't actually impact on our ability to deliver the work. Is that helping?
So, the chair, when we list all of the roads and the value of the capital works for each of those roads, we do include the 4-year capital works plan in the budget at the back. And as I said, sometimes other works, other opportunities for grant funding, etc., come up through one financial year, meaning this list of roads are pushed into this financial year. So I think it's good to look at the 4-year plan as well. It doesn't necessarily mean we haven't delivered. We've just got more on our plate than we originally planned in the annual business plan through opportunity, I think is more the way to. And sometimes projects through delays or whatever, could be inclement weather, straddle 2 years as well. So they're not completed in one financial year. They move over into the next one. So.
I'm still not a little bit confused, but I totally understand that things can straddle different financial years and inclement weather, and also that no issue with that. But I'm just wondering about then the sheer numbers. That if you're saying for this budget we have 10.9 million total capital project expenses, and now we're adding 5.8, that as a number we should have then 17 million in project expenses. That what actually our budget should be adjusted such that it says we're actually going to do 17 million worth of project expenses. That's sort of my question, that the actual numbers. Why this happens, I totally understand. I just wonder how this works in the numbers, and vice versa. The last year's budget or the previous year's budget technically should be amended to saying it wasn't 9.9, it was actually only 9.9 minus the 5.7.
Yeah.
It's just about the numerical, the counting of it.
It's like a rolling process through the chair. It's like a rolling process of updating what we've delivered each year, and it's a legislative requirement to provide the list of works that are carried forward or ongoing in the next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I mean, we'll take that away and have a look at how it's reported, because I'm looking at the numbers and I'm going, there is probably over $4 million worth of projects that were never going to be delivered last financial year. So when you add up the $500,000 for Forest, nearly 1.4 for Coleman, 830 for Curry, 540 for Ward Belt and 404 for Wingate, they were never going to be delivered last financial year.
But they did get.
Pardon?
But they did get delivered.
No. No. That I'm saying we were never looking to deliver those works. Those works were part of $4.5 million worth of work, or in fact more than $4.5 million worth of work that we were never going to deliver. So, but the way the funding came to us, all of those were lumped in, and I don't believe they were part of the 9.9, to be honest. I think we've probably still delivered about $9.9 million worth of work. But again, I'd need to do a reconciliation on that, and happy to take that away and provide a report for information on it.
That's a very good question. It does get a little bit confusing when there's a carryover of these projects, because we've got big numbers like that. People, hang on, did we actually deliver what we said we were going to? And it seems, from what Richard's saying in June, that we have. But this was money that came in with no set plan in our business plan, because we never knew we were going to get it, and we haven't been able to deliver it, and probably never were going to be able to. But it can be now put into the works plan for this year by the fact that it's carried over. It'll go into your works program. going to be delivered this year, is that right?
Yeah, it was, yeah, through the chair, always planned to deliver this financial year.
Councillor Lynn?
I've got a couple of questions. Forest Road and Coleman and them are going to be done soon because we're having a team meeting out there, so they must be going to be done soon. That's in a next fortnight's time.
Yep.
So they'll go ahead, will they?
Yep, they're definitely on the program.
Okay. The Freeling Childcare Centre, have we got any indication when I'm getting queries from ratepayers about that particular thing, not about the car park, but about when are they going to start it? A lot of people are asking and waiting. Have we got any indication when that will start?
Yeah, through the chair, we have got an indication of when, not when they're going to start, but where they're at within their process. And I would say there are some commercial aspects of that, which I wouldn't share here, but they are continuing to progress with all of their requirements to get it to a point where they can
Build.
start the building. Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, they're not quite at that point at the moment.
And the third thing is, I see on here, Freeling South office meeting room chairs. When did that one come in? We've talked about getting new chairs in the chamber, but why are we putting new chairs at Freeling South?
Yeah, again, through the chair, that's part of the overall asset renewal strategy of chairs throughout the
But why
organisation.
there and not here?
I think
It's better to be comfortable.
We don't want 17-minute meetings.
they will only occur there once the chairs have been replaced. I think they're the
so
words
these
there.
will be replaced first.
Yeah, it says here to occur after the Kapunda office projects are finalised.
Doesn't say that it's the Kapunda office. That's the Kapunda office. That's not, doesn't say the
that's
chamber.
in here.
Bad wording. Okay, thank you.
Further questions, councillors? This is not unusual to see a list about this long. Each year we sort of have something similar, my recollection. I think we have a recommendation there. We did. But we did. Councillors, we have a recommendation on page 37. If someone would like to move that way.
Yep.
Thanks, councillor Lynn. Someone like to second that?
Bill.
Oh, councillor Bill. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. I don't think I welcomed staff members who may be on Teams also up there. I think Kyron Chappell, are you there, Kyron? And I think Megan Renzella might be on Teams. Yeah, there's a little hand going up there. Thank you. Corporate card expenditure review. Any questions, councillors, in relation to this matter? I think it seems like it's been particularly well managed. There's a recommendation on the top of page 42. Questions, councillor? Any questions in relation to the corporate card expenditure? Second. Further questions or any questions? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Did you have a question, councillor Bill?
Yeah, I was just going to, does this go through the audit committee as well? Does this?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does.
It didn't on, through the chair, it didn't on this occasion. There wasn't an audit committee meeting prior to this meeting as we didn't have the chair and another independent member available for this month. So it came straight to council.
But it would normally go
okay.
through.
But
the-
normally
that's
it would
right.
go to the audit and risk committee.
Thanks, Jim.
Right. Okay, well, Did I ask all in favour of that motion? All in favour? Let's go. We're on 11.6. 11.6, councillors, the Oldham Street project, and a great report. Thank you, Megan. Very well presented and certainly thorough. Are there any questions, councillors?
I have a
Certainly.
comment. That is, if we look at this item, in background, it says the Oldham Street project originally was envisaged, etc. And then further, if we look at the history, we see the Arana Village, Arana Opportunity. Now, it's mentioned twice, but it's not mentioned in the background. And I think that that's a mistake, and it should be mentioned in the background, because we went through a lot of aggro over it.
Okay. Anyone like to comment on that? Megan, would you like to comment on that particular statement?
Through the chair, the report focused more so after that point in time. So I don't have any further comment to make on that one.
Megan's comfortable with the report the way it was, so I don't know if I can provide any more information for you, Councillor Peter. Councillor David?
Page 51, there's a table 1 there, land division and sale of property. Now on the left-hand side, we've got expenditure there. Land division works 287,986. Subtotal down the bottom, the same, 287,986. Right-hand side, we've got income, net proceeds from the sale of the 4 units, 722,856. And the 5 blocks of land currently sold, 377,934. So now what are we saying, that the 287 comes off that 1.1 mil for a net figure, or has that already been taken out? Says net, yes, that's right. But there's not a total down the bottom is what I'm saying.
These figures in the right-hand column, net figures. So that's a net figure.
So that's after that's been taken out, that 287's been taken out. Right, which leads me to my next question.
Councillor David, I might ask Megan to sort of just clarify that, just for
You
thoroughness.
just did.
Megan, did you hear what Councillor David was saying there?
Thank you, Mayor Bill. Yes, through the chair, I'm happy to explain that. The expenditure is the cost as per the 3 dot points just above that table 1. The net figures, so what I did for the net figures, they are the actual costs of what we received from the sale of the land after you take out the conveyancer, the GST that we had to pay, the agent's fees, all of those, the stamp duty, everything else. So that's net for the proceeds of the sale of the land, not net profit for the total project. Does that help?
So the 1.1 million is net of that $287,986. It includes that?
No, the 1.1 million is what we've received from the sale of the land. We need to then take off the 287.
Right, thank you.
But I haven't given a total figure from the project because we haven't yet completed stage 3. So that will be the next report when the works are all completed.
Right. That clarifies that, because that was the question that was asked. Councillor David?
Question number 2 on that. 2 years ago, we were told at that time that the net cost to council at that time for that project was $1.75 million. Okay, now my estimation from a land agent's hat on, we've got 2 more blocks of land up there that are going to get sold. And if we get 85 grand each for them, less the cost to demolish the old building, we'll probably net another 100 grand. Okay, so what I'm saying from that is then we are going to be in the red on this project to somewhere between $800,000 and $900,000. Would somebody like to comment on that?
Sure.
Yeah,
Megan, would you like to comment on that statement?
Through the chair, the total figures from what was predicted prior, I think we're pretty close to being on track. But without having all of those figures to be able to put into this report, they were part of the confidential reports that have yet to be released.
So there's more income source somewhere in confidential, is that correct?
No, the income is yet to come from the sale of the 2 allotments. As Councillor Mosley has stated, we will obviously sell them for an amount less the costs for the demolition of the building. And he's probably about right. We might get around $100,000 for that from our estimates as well. But the total outcome from the project, I can't answer that question for you now.
through the chair, just to summarise what Megan is saying there, and that is there's a range of matters that still remain in confidence that we can't, that we couldn't include in this public report. And in terms of the information that Megan has provided in this report, it is consistent with previous reports that council has received, and the income that we're looking at is on target for that.
Richard, is it on target to for us to be dropping $1 million?
Through the chair, our target sales were 1.25 million through to 1.36. That was the estimate at the time. So right at this point in time, sorry, I'll just flick back to that report. We're at 1.1. We have got a couple of blocks to sell, so we're not far off that lower number of 1.25. We expect to be in that range for our sales. And that is, you know, as Megan has put in this report, the ex-GST side of things. So we do have to take the GST off of our sales prices because we are eligible for that.
Councillor Dean?
Mayor Bill, the clarification, I think, of what Councillor David is looking for is covered in number 3. Prop most likely request a further report once the project has been completed, detailing the outcomes and further associated costs. I would assume that once the project is finalised, most of that, if not all of that stuff under confidence, will be released. So you end up with a final costing at that stage. Is that correct? Is that what that's all about? Number 3.
That would be correct. Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up a little bit on what Councillor David has mentioned there, though, because I'm not quite following where we're going to lose this particular amount of money on where we're going with this. It doesn't seem that way from what I'm hearing. Could you just explain that a little bit more?
2 years ago, we were told we'd spent $1.75 million on that project. 2 years ago, in about January 2019 from memory. I'll have to go back and consult my records at home to be exact. And we had a glowing report from David Hope telling us how we were going to make a one-stop profit of over $1 million on this project. Now, the majority of the things that David Hope put in that report have turned out to be wrong. Now, I don't know what we paid David Hope for that report, and sometime in the future I would like to know, because I'm going to move a motion once we get to the final stage of this that a full critique of this project be done to make sure we do not make the same mistakes again going forward in getting into entrepreneurial projects that we have no expertise in as a council.
Where do we go from here? Yeah, Councillor Bill?
Thanks, Mayor Bill. Yeah, I take David's point, but I think we've got to remember that the bowling club was in a serious position. This whole project was enacted to allow them to build a magnificent setup at Dutton Park. And I don't think that we need to be ashamed that we tried to help them, and we did help them in a huge way, and provide a magnificent bowling green at the Dutton Park Centre. And you know, the council's tried numerous, as the history explains, numerous ways to try and make it as profitable or financially viable as possible. But you know, things happen.
Thanks, Councillor Bill. That was very encouraging. Look, obviously it seems like a work in progress to me, and it's pretty hard to come to a conclusion before all the matters are finalised. But you've put up some warning signals there, Councillor David, and they'll be listened to. There's no doubt about that. But that's all we can do just at present. We're just with the other section in confidential. We can't even discuss it. But I'm relatively confident that I think we will come out in a reasonable sort of way out of this. But we don't ever want to forget what Bill has raised there. This was done for a purpose in the first instance. We failed in the vision of putting our retirement village in there for all sorts of reasons. It was something that this full council agreed with. We went up there and had a look at the village in Moonta, and we all agreed this was a great idea. The community didn't, in the end, accept that, and it fell over. So Arana came along, and it was another great opportunity. Unfortunately, the community once again put a few red flags up, and that didn't work. So we've had to then rebuild on our ideas to come up with some other way. Well, I don't know if there's any other way than what's been done to try and sell that particular land. Now, as an agent, Councillor David, you should know that you know, you've got to start somewhere, and this is what happened. And the land has been available for sale, and it still is, because there's 2 more blocks to be sold, etc. And we don't really know what the total outcome is going to be till it's all done. That's where we're up to. And I take your question.
Just what I'm a little bit frightened of is we have got a bowling club here with 60 members thereabouts. Right now, I'm confident it's going to come in at over 800,000 in the red. So you go out there in the main street and say, if you've got a club with 60 members, come to council and we'll support your project for 60 members, and we're going to throw in 800K. Come on.
No, well, yeah, we don't know if that's the case, though, do we? Councillor Simon.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment that I don't think it takes a road scholar to figure out that if you only got 1.1 million now in sales, we're only going to get 100,000 more at the most for the other 2 blocks. Then we minus the 287, which is roughly 300, so we're back to 900. And then we take the GST out, which is probably another 100 grand, so we're back to 800. And we owe 1.75 million. So it's quite easy to see that we will be in the red between $800,000 and $900,000. I just want to make sure that it doesn't take any great calculations anymore. And we've predicted that 2 years ago that that's what's going to happen when we all said, oh, this is going to be fine, whatever. We knew that that's not going to be fine. We knew we we're going to lose that much money. And I totally understand the bowling club is a great thing and everything else. However, we foresaw that this is what's going to happen quite a while ago, and it's now happening. So I just want to make sure we can talk around a long time, but it's going to be clear. You can't say, oh, we're going to see we know that we're going to be in the red between $800,000 and $900,000 easily with this at the end of it. That's all I'm trying to say.
All right, I accept that because that's facts. Is there any other way that we do something different from here in to annul that debt? Any other way that we can proceed?
I think thinking forward, this is behind us now because it's done and dusted, basically, okay? But what I'm saying is, any future project that is not core council business must be very, very well thought out before one council dollar, ratepayers' money, is spent on that project. Now, I don't know, and I'd love to know, I'm going to ask the question at not this meeting, hopefully I get back in, I'll ask the question, what did it cost us in consultancy fees for David Hope to give us a report that was totally useless as far as I'm concerned? I'm being 100% honest there, totally useless.
Oh, thanks, councillor David. Megan, would you like to wrap up your report?
The recommendation.
I was just going to give Megan that one opportunity if she's got anything further that she'd like to add, but
Thank you, Mayor Bill. No further comment other than GST has already been taken out from the figures that Councillor Simon was referring to.
right. Thanks, councillor.
I'll second it.
And thanks, councillor Dean. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thanks, councillors. And thank you, Megan, for an extraordinary amount of work that you put into that. And it's just unfortunate that we're not going to see the result that it deserves. But it's not over yet. We move on to 11.7, the Gawler River Water Reuse Scheme. And wow, what an era that's been. And what a great achievement too by this council. I think probably one of the biggest infrastructure programs of any regional council in South Australia for many, many years, if not ever. When you're talking about a $22 million project, it was delivered by and large our own staff. And I think Kyron Chappell in particular deserves a great big Brownlow medal for his contribution to this. Richard's team as well. It's been an extraordinary journey, but it's coming to an end. As you can see by this report here, I'll probably open it up for questions now, if I may. Anyone like to comment? Councillor Dean?
I'd just like to make the comment that this was an entrepreneurial project that's made, as I estimate, somewhere around about $16 million profit, which is almost an entire years of rates in 6 years additional, and no cost to ratepayers, which we were able to use to do things like our town roads and other things. So as a project, I was involved in it right from the very start, and it was a very fast moving project because of the fact that the private partner pulled out 3 months before the deadline, and we had to come up with an alternative, which our CEO, assisted by Kyron and others, did brilliantly, and pioneered in the process something I don't think had been attempted in the same form before, is now being used as a model by other councils. So this is a project which we should acknowledge has been extremely successful and of great benefit to our ratepayers. And it came about by being entrepreneurial.
Absolutely. The money will be hopefully in our bank account by the end of this month here, and I understand there is going to be a cheque handover somewhere in Adelaide, I think, to gather the media around for a bit of publicity, but I don't know too much about that at this point in time. But Councillor Peter?
I just make the comment that looking macroscopically at the project, the delivery of it, of water to Seppeltsfield, gives Seppeltsfield a one entity monopoly on that water. And I don't think that should be lost. And I notice also that that's my first comment. My second one is that we've heard Bunyip 2 being talked about, and I wonder what's going to happen there. Does the council once again, in effect, subsidise the monopoly of one entity?
Would say the subsidising, but maybe we're. Yeah, Kyra, are you online there?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Kyra, did you hear what Councillor David was saying there? He's got some concerns with Seppelsfield.
Yeah, I guess from
Sorry.
through the chair, just from a consumer perspective, I guess there's multiple options to purchase water in the Barossa Valley in particular. So there's Barossa Infrastructure Limited scheme that supplies into the valley. You've got Bunyip Water, which is obviously part of the project that Council's been involved with, and you've also got SA Water. And at present, the state government is actually exploring another project called Barossa New Water, which is looking to bring in further recycled water into the Barossa Valley. They have sort of indicated as part of that project that they've been engaging with both Barossa Infrastructure Limited and Bunyip Water to utilise existing infrastructure for scheme efficiency. So within that context, I'm not sort of seeing any monopolisation of water supply into the Barossa.
Yes, I attended a meeting last week with Kyra over at Barossa at the Bill scheme, and they didn't have any problem at all with us pursuing Bunyip 2 at all, and no worries at all. They want to see more water come into the Barossa Valley, whatever way it's possible. So here we are, councillors. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Simon?
Thanks. Yes. So the first question is just everywhere it says, for example, it says received an acknowledged correspondence from Seppelsfield Wines in its intent to repay the loan associated. Then with the bank, it's the same thing that with Seppelsfield Wine to repay the loan associated with the achievement that they have approved funding to do that. Where in this recommendation does it say they're actually going to do it? Like, when do we know that's like it only says, yeah, they say they intend to do it? Well, anybody can say they intend to do something. There's no guarantee in there saying we're doing it. So how do we know that that's what's happening?
Richard?
Yeah, look, thank you. Kyron has done a fantastic job of pulling this report together, and it is an extremely complicated environment. The recommendations have been written or had to be written in a vague manner because there are a number of legal instruments that need to be executed, or there are legal agreements that need to be approved before we actually get to that point of going, yes, we will buy it. So this report or these recommendations allow that to occur. So it actually gives staff that opportunity, sorry, not just staff and the mayor, to work through this in the background rather than yeah, does that make sense? So it can't occur. So yeah, immediately.
Thank you, Richard. Kyron, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I guess in terms of process, the conclusion agreement that's attachment 4, I think, section 4 of that talks about the settlement of the transaction documents. So that steps out the process. So essentially, the process starts with the payment of the funds. So essentially, those funds, once they've confirmed that they've hit, they've been paid, then there's various actions that then need to occur to execute other documents to release security over the assets and these sorts of things. So I guess the first step in the process is to confirm that funds have actually been transferred to the bank account. So until that happens, the latter steps in that settlement process don't occur, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Kyron. Happy with that, Councillor Simon? Councillor David?
That's brilliant. And I see that comment there from National Bank. They're always guaranteeing the money's going to be paid.
Right.
So that's good enough for me. Bunyip Mark 2, have we got any progress with the change of government with the funds being available from feds for Bunyip Mark 2?
Kyron, would you be able to answer councillor David's question in relation to Bunyip 2 there?
Yes, certainly can. And through the chair, we've been corresponding with PIRSA, who's the state government agency that's managing that project. They've advised us that there's been no change to the federal government program through the change of government. So those funds, the funding agreements are still in place. They're legal documents. And remain so. And I guess further to that, we've been advised that council is once again leading in this space from that whole program in the fact that our particular project is advancing and progressing on track and more quickly than all other projects that the state managed to acquire from that funding program. So positive signs on that front.
Thank you, Kyron. Further questions, councillors? Councillor Simon?
I do have one more question. I noticed at the end of all these agreements that we're going to sign with Bunyip Water, I suppose there's a water supply agreement. Now, in there it says that we're going to obviously buy the water henceforth once this Bunyip 2 has been transferred the ownership of that to the Bunyip Water. We're going to buy water for our irrigation. So specifically in you, it mentions obviously the RTE and the Rosevelly, the industrial estate there, but which probably doesn't use that much water yet. But for Hewitt, how much of a what's the cost? I assume up until now this water we got for free. So how much cost is involved by now having to pay for the water that Hewitt uses for out of that system?
Yeah, that's a good question. Kyron, the water that we're currently using at Hewitt from the scheme in future, what will we be paying for that water? I think that's the question, Councillor Simon.
Yes, yep, through the chair. So the water supply agreement that's attached there, I think it's attachment 10 in the documentation, sets out the pricing structure whereby there's some rebates that are applied to the Bunyip Water pricing. So this was sort of secured by way of one of the existing agreements. And effectively how those rebates are being applied in this water supply agreement, it sets an upper and a lower sort of benchmark price that the amount paid by council would fall between. So, and the lower threshold point is basically the cost of the agricultural water that Bunyip Water provides to its agricultural customers. And the upper threshold is SA Water's community concession price point, which is effectively what the Trinity College would be able to access in the Roseworthy Township expansion. So significant savings over all of other council reserves that are basically paying for, I guess, the potable water pricing. So there's probably good, between 20 and 30% savings on those water costs.
Thank you so much, Simon. Kyron, further questions?
If I can have a clarification, the question was, I understand that we have that band and we probably get a really good deal and all that sort of stuff. My question was more, so right now we're not paying anything, I suppose, for that water that's coming out of that Bunyip system because it's our water. That's, I suppose, a question as well. But from the time that the ownership changes, we will be, through this water supply agreement, be paying for that water. What sort of cost is involved in there? Is it like thousands of dollars? Is it hundreds of thousands of dollars? Like what's the cost for the water that we will be from the 31st of August, presumably will have to be paying? Do we have some sort of...
That was your original question, wasn't
it?
Yeah. Richard, could you help with that?
Yeah, through the chair. It's only connected to a couple of the smaller reserves.
Just through the chair, I could probably make a...
Yeah, thank you, Kyron, if you could.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. As an example, say if 8 megalitres are used, so 8,000 kilolitres at a price point of $1.80 per kilolitre, that's $18,000 worth of water. So that's, in the order of tens of thousands of dollars at the sort of lower end of the tens of thousands, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Kyron.
Yeah, so certainly not it's a reasonable amount for sure.
Were we paying it before, Mr Mayor?
It was coming out. of the
Were we
scheme.
being charged it previously? We may have been charged.
Well, unless Bunyip Water didn't charge us for that particular access.
No,
Kyron, can you tell us if Bunyip Water actually charged us for the access to the water that we're currently using on Hewitt?
Yeah, through the chair. So the agreements stipulated during the initial term that the water would be made available and fully rebated, essentially. So whatever the cost was, it was 100% rebated. So that was up to the point of end of the initial term and the conclusion of the agreements, which we're at now. And then the water would be priced at a recycled water price point. So that's essentially how the Prudential Review reported it. That's how it's going to play out. And I guess the Prudential audit will sort of wrap up and compare to the original Prudential Review to see where we land. But certainly from my perspective, it looks like we're tracking in accordance and possibly better than what was in the initial Prudential Review for the project.
Thanks, Kyron.
Prior to 2016, council was just using potable water on those 3 reserves and paying for it. So over that 6-year period, we've had a bit of a bonus and a benefit. And obviously now with it going into someone else's ownership, we lose that benefit. And we will be paying a price that will be less than what the SA Water potable price is. It'll go to the SA Water concessional or charitable concessional price as a maximum. If not, it will be a price that is lower than that, which will be good. But they are only smaller reserves. They're not, they're not sort of like the Freeling Rec Park where it's a big oval. They're more, you'd probably be familiar with a couple of those reserves. So they're not ones that we use a significant amount of water on.
Thank you, Richard. Happy with that, Councillor Simon? Okay, well, shall we move on? Any further questions in relation to Gawler River Water Project? I'll put the recommendation that's on page 54. There's a series of 6 recommendations.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Bill. Would someone like to second that? Councillor Lynn, all those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Thank you, councillors, and thank you so much, Kyron, and your team for this amazing report and amazing project. Thank you. 11.8, councillors, our recovery of a long-term rate debt. Any questions in relation to this matter? I think it's been well dealt with. Thank you, June. If there are no questions, I'll put the recommendations there. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Dean. I don't want to hurry anyone. Are there any questions? I think it's pretty straightforward. Have a mover, have a seconder. Seconder, Councillor Bill. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Thank you, councillors. Uh, 11.9, the Christmas opening hours. Questions in relation to that, councillors? Be straightforward. Councillor Lynn, thank you. Councillor Sharon, all those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Thank you, councillors. And thank you, June, for your report. Here we go, 11.10, the policy review 809, cemetery memorials policy. Are there any major amendments to this particular policy that you know of? No, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, I have a recommendation if there are no questions. Halfway down page 69. Are there any questions, councillors? If not, the recommendation's halfway down page 69. If someone would like to move that way. Thanks, Councillor David. Councillor Jason, all those in favour? Those against, that's carried. The policy review 1.19, external grant funding policy. Kyron, any major changes in relation to this policy?
No, pretty minor, as you can see, but happy to take any questions on it.
Any questions, councillors? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Oh, move it, please. Move that, Councillor David, Councillor Jason. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you, councillors. 11.12, the private code amendment, 3006 Torch Road, Gawler Belt. A lengthy report in relation to this matter. Are there any questions, councillors?
Through the chair, I did have some questions, but I've addressed them to Craig and I know what he's talking about.
Right. Councillors, are any questions you'd like to raise in relation to this matter? I understand there's a fair bit of housekeeping involved in this, Craig, is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Probably more so in the sense that there is a process that council has the opportunity to engage in here. Sorry, excuse me. And really, council has had a position in respect of this land previously, so this is a refreshing of that in terms of its potential rezoning. I think the key is that we look for deeds to be in place before the code amendments advanced, and we'll certainly include that in the submission.
Craig. Any questions, councillors? If not, I'll put the recommendations. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Wink? Councillor Dean? Someone like to second that? Councillor Jason? All those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Craig. And good evening, Lisa. Been hiding up the background there. Councillors, we move on now to page 82 of our agenda, questions on notice. But we don't have any questions on notice. Section 13 is questions without notice. Do we have any questions without notice? Councillor Jason?
Just a couple of quick ones. I was out and about on the weekend because we finally had some sun, which is great. Now, Gundry Hill, that's council owned, isn't it?
Gundry's Hill?
Gundry's Hill,
Yes.
But obviously the works that's been done up there was by the developer, correct? Is that correct?
My
Was that
understanding, the
council as
works that were done there were a state government grant and the developers, they paid. That's where the funding came from.
Question obviously for this is up there on the weekend, there's been damage done to the bridge up there. So the fencing to the bridge has been kicked through. Looking at the quality of it, it's only light aluminium fencing, held on with a couple of Tex screws. And there was also Tex screws missing in the frame or in the frames as over the bridge. Now, looking at that, obviously we're looking at probably 3 metre drop from the bridge with substandard fencing, in my view.
Yep.
And on the side of the fencing, there's just wire mesh, which is probably at best middle of your thigh height, and then a couple of bits of cabling on the top, which isn't even steel cabling. If you actually press on it, it drops. So again, you're looking at a 3 metre drop with very minimal safety regard there. Where do we stand with that being a public space and being owned by council?
Well, I think now, thank you, Councillor Jason, for raising it, because I think now that you have, we stand liable if anything happens because we know about it.
Yeah.
And because we know about it, we need to act on that.
Now, I know that there is safety fencing, I believe, or the bridge has been covered end to end, but the actual fencing itself,
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't particularly have thought that was the safest.
I'd like to get Richard's team up there to have a look at it.
Yeah, through the chair, they are aware of it, and as I understand it, they are attending to it.
But what are they going to do? They're going to replace it with the same substandard aluminium fencing?
I couldn't answer that question, other than whatever they do would need to conform with the code that's appropriate for that sort of drop off.
So are we as council running to the code, or is that through the developer? Have they run to code? I guess would be the
No,
question.
all of the work at Gundry's Hill was delivered by council's works team.
Right.
Yep, we'll follow that through. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you, Councillor Jason. That's a good one.
I do have a second question. It's something that's come up through social media, and I've seen it on more than one occasion for people asking about sports equipment, either along the Swan Path or I noticed the other day in the train park, there's a section at the back of there which is a large area which is not being utilised. Have council looked at anything in regards to sports equipment along any of these areas? We have it down in Hewitt, or there's areas down in Hewitt, they've got areas set up for that. Is that something that come under looking at?
I couldn't agree more with you, Jason, Councillor Jason. I think this has been raised before, but not for a long time. And I think it's probably timely that it was raised again. So this could come up at, is that strategy or would it be infrastructure?
The infrastructure and
We could raise that at the infrastructure meeting with a report on the prospect of putting an outdoor gym there, with the gym equipment, etc. And work out the appropriate place for it to be located, whether that be on the Swan Pathway, the back of the children's playground, or at the mine site, wherever. But it need to be near a walking trail.
So
Councillor Jason?
through the chair, how do we action that or motion it or move it forward? How do we go from here to actually process it?
Well, we could ask for a report to the infrastructure meeting.
yeah, look, through the chair, I think the appropriate place to is through the annual business plan process and as an elected member business case, to be presented early in the process so that it can be, worked right through. And that sort of thing can be started now with approaches to staff so that we can actually get a real understanding of what's required, where it could go, all of those things. And then when it comes to the business case, it can be properly, the annual business plan side of the year and the budget can be well costed out, and you can go from there.
So do we get this on the agenda for the infrastructure meeting?
I'll think it's going to be an infrastructure committee meetings before the end of this council term.
Oh, of course, yeah. Councillor Dean?
And perhaps some of that discussion, that the investigation could be fed through the infrastructure committee for comment, right, to help refine stuff, what might be in a business case.
Thanks, Councillor Dean. Thanks, Councillor Jason. Any further questions without notice, Councillor?
Mr Mayor, just a comment. I mean, as you said at the start of the meeting, Kapunda is the fittest town in Australia. So it'll either get a lot of use or it won't get used at all.
Good pickup.
I have a question though,
Thanks,
Mr Mayor.
Bill.
Just it concerns the runoff over Twarts Road at the moment from the Rosebery Township expansion. We know it's interim. How interim is it going to be? Because I would assume after last night would have been flooding as well. So is there any comment on that?
I might ask Lisa if she could comment. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Through the chair, we are aware of the issue. The recent rain has caused a few issues down Twarts Road. We're currently negotiating with one of the developers to look at bringing on additional measures to control the interim issues that we're experiencing until such time the final measures are in place. So we're actually having some very beneficial discussions at the moment, and we hope it's going to be resolved very soon. Basically, we're looking at increasing the capacity of some of those basins in the short term, and also looking at getting water across the across Twarts Road down the western side of Kangaroo Flat Road, where there's a natural drainage path at the moment. So we are working behind the scenes on that as we speak.
Thank you, Lisa. You satisfied with that one, Bill? Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? We don't have any motions on notice or any motions without notice. We don't have any of those. The next section of our council meeting, councillors, is the confidential items. I need someone to move that we move into confidence under section 90 of the Act. Cheerio, Fabio. Would someone like to move that way? Thanks, Councillor David. Someone like to second that? Councillor Jason.
June.
We're now in confidential session, councillors. Proposed there. So the matter will stay in confidence till the matter's finalised. I need someone to move that way. Councillor Bill, someone like to second that? Councillor Jason, all those in favour? Those against, that's carried. So the matter's in confidence. Councillors, unless there are any other questions or comments, I can officially close the meeting. And now, probably got another meeting next Tuesday night, haven't we? So hopefully we'll see everybody